Again, my name is Joe Monchine. I am a resident with my wife and our 3 kids here in Oak Brook. We live in Brook Forest. My background is in industrial distribution management. I've also had an opportunity to do a number of volunteer activities with 3 boys. You get involved in what their interests are, so soccer and Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and things of that nature. We've been here for just about 9 years. My grandmother lived in Briarwood. My folks live in Briarwood, and as I said, Jeannie and I and our 3 boys live in Brook Forest. What we wanted to do today is give you an opportunity to talk about the referenda that's coming up on April 9th. This is being hosted by the PAC, the Political Action Committee called Citizens for a Better Oak Brook. The real mission, the real goal of the PAC is informational and giving an opportunity to gather information and share it with the community, with the residents, our friends and our neighbors that live here. So that's what we'll talk about today. I'd like to thank the library for the opportunity to utilize their facilities as we do these informational sessions. We also have Alan Hanslick, President of the school board, here with us today to go through a presentation. And then I definitely wanted to thank you guys for being here, taking time out, having an opportunity with us to have a conversation. There is some information in clipboards on those on the clipboards in front of you. There is a blue card on there. That is a question card. The way we want to go ahead and run this so that we can get through everybody's questions is if you have a question, go ahead and write it on the blue card. There's a front and a back. Take as much space as you need. If you need more, raise your hand. We'll let Alan go through his presentation. Then we'll have a kind of a switch from Alan back to myself. At that time, we will collect those blue cards. So you'll have time to look and listen to his presentations. Maybe you might get a couple of answers to the questions that you came with, or we may generate a couple more questions for you. At the end, there is also a white piece of paper, if you would, that'll help us give us some feedback on how we did, what you thought about the presentation. We'll collect that when you leave. There's also some marketing information and materials over there. If you're interested, you're welcome to take it. If you need some more, if there isn't enough, let us know. We'll get it to you. So, with that, myself again, I'm one of the co-chairs for the Citizens for a Better Oak Brook. The other co-chair is a gentleman by the name of Jim Petta. I live obviously in what we call the District 53. Jim lives outside of District 53, but an Oak Brook resident. And we've been able to put a team together really to complement the mission being gathering information, presenting information, and holding informational sessions so that you as residents are informed when you go to the ballots on April 9th. Now the ballot regarding this, has 2 questions. We'll show you what those questions are a little bit later, but one is going to pertain to the 8.5 acres of sports core land being sold to the school, and everybody in 60523 votes on that. The second question is for District 53 residents. The school is asking for a $15 million bond referendum, which is a portion of the $40 million cost of this concept of a one-campus K-8 building. Okay. So again, blue cards, we'll collect those. Write your questions on them, we'll collect them after you have an opportunity to listen to Alan in his presentation. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and bring Alan up here. Again, he's president of the school board here at Butler 53. With Alan here, he's going to go through and give us a presentation and also have an opportunity to help answer the questions that you guys have. So Alan?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I've been on the school board for 4 years. Our term is coming up in April again, and we're all going to roll over one additional session. My background, I was with Harris Bank of Montreal for 34 years, ran the operating side of the business, handled all of their contracts and their various efficiency programs. So what we've been trying to do in the school is very much in line with the background that some of the board members have. Before I begin, who's in District 53 here and who's outside of District? Who's outside of District 53? 1, 2, okay. Midwest Chase, I want to acknowledge Midwest Chase in particular because our card was incorrect. It said Midwest Club for today. So our apologies, and we'll give you a refund on the admission ticket today.
Really?
All right. All right, we're going to run through a few slides, so bear with us here. Obviously, the proposal we have on the dockets is to build a new K-8 school on 8.5 acres of the sports court. We think it's the right decision for all of Oak Brook, and we'll try to convince you why we think that is. For those people in District 53, a new school would be much different than the schools we have today. Everybody talks about 21st century learning. The way kids learn today is different than the way they learned in 1959 or 71 when our schools were built. Security is much more critical today than it used to be. All of the schools in the U.S. have similar security features. They were not intended to prevent some of the crimes that are really occurring today. A new school, you can start from scratch and do different things. Putting a school together, K-8, we've done some research, we'll talk about it in a few minutes. It will improve the relationships amongst the kids and the faculty, and will also produce operating efficiencies for us. And we absolutely know it'll be less expensive than maintaining our 2 current buildings. For the rest of Oak Brook, positively impact property values, and we'll tell you why we believe that's going to happen. Additional capacity would be added into the structure so that we could take additional children from outside the District 53 boundaries. Definitely will save the school and the village money. And the sports core, most people didn't know, we didn't realize until we really got into this. The sports core, which is owned by the village, is intended to be a self-sustaining entity. Unfortunately, it's not. They currently have a debt that they owe to the village of $2.4 million. So every year their net income is a negative number. They're losing money on an annual basis. And we'll talk a little bit about the sports core in this presentation. On the home value side, you're going to see some slides here that we'll run through about One Oak Brook. So I'm going to come back to that as we get into there. Something about our school board, obviously the academic standards at Butler 53 are quite high, among the very highest in the state of Illinois. If not, it's number 1 or 2 in the state. So part of the goal of the board is to maintain a high academic standard and also look to the future so that as things we know will be changing, that we can adapt to that. We also knew as a board that we needed to take a look at our cost structure. The first year we spent learning about the school, and then beginning the second year we undertook a process to improve our expense ratios. So for example, we renegotiated all of our third-party contracts. We developed job descriptions and job ranges for non-union employees. Before that, those didn't exist. And we had a difficult labor relations negotiation. It was necessary to begin to change the cost curve and the expectations on salaries. So if you look at our, what they say, cost per child to deliver education, this year it's down 5%. It'll be down another 5% next year. The 4 years before that, our cost per child was increasing by 9% a year. And that's an unsustainable trend line. What this is allowing us to do now is, with the tax money we receive, we're able to throw off excess cash, right now in the neighborhood of $800 to $1 million a year. I'll talk about why that's important in a few minutes. The other thing is we met with S&P. The school has a AAA bond rating. We met with S&P to go through the new school initiative, what it would mean to our financial statement, and they reaffirmed our AAA rating with the new school. We realized that as a board that we needed to now take a look at our facilities costs. We needed to take a look at the future for learning spaces. The district, like many towns, has experienced declining enrollment over the last 10 years. And we also knew, given the fact that the two buildings, one of them was built in 1959, Butler, and has been added on to 6 times. The other one was built in 1971. And we knew that we needed to look at a solution that would last the community more than a handful of years. The time is opportune right now with interest rates being as low as they are. We looked at really 4 options what to do with the schools. Number one, we didn't publicize very much, but it was basically the superintendent of the school and myself took a look at closing the schools. We looked at, should we merge with another school system like Hinsdale? We took a look at retaining the 2 buildings, just keeping them going the way they are. We very carefully looked at retaining the Butler School, refurbishing it and expanding it into a K through 8, and then also a new school. After a year of study, we dismissed the first 3. What we found out on the option of merging with Hinsdale is we would save, the only money we would save is in the cost of a superintendent. The problem is that if Hinsdale received our 2 schools, they would have the same issue they'd be facing that we are. What do you do with 2 aging structures? If they decided to close the schools, then that would require parents to bus their children across town to Hinsdale, which would not be particularly good. But the real important thing here is we found that if we were to merge with Hinsdale, our taxes would actually increase from where they are, because we would then assume what they call a blended rate with Hinsdale. So if you do any homework, you'll find that the school tax rates in District 53 are the lowest in Illinois. There isn't anyone lower. And part of the reason for that is we're very fortunate to have a large corporate base that actually pays about 54% of our expense. So we're lucky in that regard. If we maintain the 2 buildings, we hired a company, FGM, architectural firm, and we asked them to do 2 things. One is to do a mandatory 10-year life safety review of our 2 structures, and number 2, to work through a 50-year cost analysis of what it would take to maintain the 2 schools for another 50 years. We found out that would, over the 50-year period, would cost taxpayers $48.7 million. This information was verified by a third party. The third party is a resident in Brook who lives in District 53, but his profession is he's an architect, he's an engineer, and he works for a company that builds new schools and maintains new schools. So we had kind of a check and balance as we went through this. So kind of the do-nothing scenario, looking forward, we know we'll be spending $48.7 million to retain these 2 schools. The $48.7, though, doesn't do anything to improve the educational environment, and it certainly doesn't address some of the deficiencies we have in the schools. Concerning expanding Butler Junior High, we looked at this very carefully. Butler, although it's an older building, is a stronger building. The Brook Forest School was originally designed as an open classroom concept in 1971. They converted that school shortly after and put temporary walls up in the classrooms, and the classrooms are oddly shaped. But as far as a physical structure is concerned, the Butler School is a stronger school. What we found there, we again worked with FGM and Mark Proskin, who's our independent resource, and we carefully looked at what renovation would be required within the core of the building. Was it light, medium, heavy remodeling, number 1, and number 2, the cost to build out that school, to put a K through 5 wing on the front end of the school, And then second of all, to put what they call a cafetorium, which is a tri-purpose room. It's a combination gymnasium, auditorium, and cafeteria. So it serves three purposes. So on the other side of the school in the front would be a cafetorium and a K through 5. The cost to refurbish the school and add those two additions on is $30 million. So we know to get that school to a K through 8 structure, it'll be $30 million. The problem we found is today at Brook Forest, the school has 8.5 acres of property. At Butler, on York Road, we have 10.5 acres of property. There are Illinois state guidelines, and these are guidelines, so you can violate them. It's not a rule, it's a guideline. Indicate that for a school of 500 children, you should have available 20 to 22 acres of space. So if you kind of work backwards, the Butler School, after expansion, the building will consume 4 acres. The parking will consume 2 acres. So we take 6 of the 10.5 acres away, leaving us with 4 odd acres of green space for 500 children. If any of you know Butler well right now, even though they only have 160 kids in that school at this moment, when the sports teams go out, they have to divide the field because the girls' soccer interferes with the boys' soccer. So now we're going to compound that and put a lot more children there. So we would really have to make it work, we'd have to go out and buy some of the surrounding homes around the Butler School. This is something that our board does not want to do. We wouldn't want it done to ourselves, and we don't think others want it done. Even though we have the right of eminent domain, that should be used as a very, very last resort in an emergency basis. We don't want to displace local residents. The other issue that we found in that school, for any of you who are familiar with it, when parents go to pick up their kids at the end of the day, the traffic circle within the school isn't large enough to avoid a spill out of cars onto York Road. Now, if we combine Brook Forest into Butler, because of the increase in the number of students, the traffic congestion, the number of cars running through that circle will increase 185%, and the bus traffic will double. The architects, given the current location of the school on the property, were unable to design enough looping space on our own property to accommodate that traffic flow. So that causes another set of problems. Lastly, we took a quick look at demolishing that building and buying property around it, and that's an option. But when you run all the numbers, it actually becomes considerably more expensive than to just build one new building on the sports court. Here's a quick comparison of what would happen if we remodel and retain the 2 buildings versus building a new school. So we know in the next 10 years with the 2 schools, we're going to invest $12.2 million in what we call life safety and normal required maintenance. For the 40 years after that, following normal maintenance schedules, we'll invest $36.5 million in the ongoing maintenance of the 2 schools. So we know we're going to spend $48.7 million. If we build a new school, the projections from the architects are that it would be a $40 million school, and actually the latest projection is 37.5, but we're leaving it right now at 40 million. The maintenance the maintenance cost of maintaining one new school versus 2 old schools is about almost a little under $10 million less over 50 years. And that makes sense. It's easier to maintain something that's under 50 years old than it is something that's over 50 years old, and easier to do 1 instead of 2. The bond interest cost And we'll talk about how we're going to finance this or propose financing it, but if we add in all of the bond costs for interest, the new bond, the $15 million bond that goes to taxpayers, and an internal bond that the school would take on, that's $9 million over the life of the bond, which is 20 years. Now, the consolidated savings, we did a study of what will happen when you take our two schools and you merge them into one. And it's very much like a business environment in some areas, not all. But virtually all of our third-party contracts, the services that we rely on, will decrease in cost, whether it's janitorial or lawn maintenance, alarm companies. So there are savings that accrue from that. Second area is HVAC. The new school would be designed with the latest heating and ventilating and air conditioning technology, better windows, better insulation. We can look at heat pumps for the school rather than the old furnaces that we have in the current building. So our utility cost is going to go down. The third area is copiers. Schools use a lot of copy paper. If you go into the schools today, we have a few high-speed printers. In a new environment, we would go to more areas of large copying centers so that the cost per copy goes down. And then the third thing is really an administrative cost. Today, the way the schools are run, you have a principal in one school, you have a principal in another school, you have a superintendent. When we consolidate into one structure, we would have one principal. If you look at the two schools today, we have 3 administrative centers. One at Brook Forest, where the principal is, one at Butler, where the principal is, and a third one where the superintendent is. Those 3 administrative support centers become one. So the combination of these events, we anticipate will save us $570,000 a year. Right now, the school is spending about $10.5 million a year to run itself. So it's about 5% savings a year, which we think is a fairly conservative estimate. But over the course of 50 years, 570,000 adds up to 28.5 million. So what we're trying to show here is all in, whether we keep the 2 schools and spend our money by maintaining them, or build a new school and let some of these efficiencies fund the school and the lower maintenance costs fund the school, the cost to go new versus stay old is virtually the same. Why do we think it's important to build new? We think we can do a lot more with security than what we're doing today. We have had people visit new schools, and there are some pictures here. If you go through our 2 current schools, and then you just look at what can be done, it's a night and day difference in what we could deliver in space. And we also think for the future of Oak Brook, it's important to begin to look forward, not backwards. The situation that we face with the 2 old schools is not going to get better, it's just going to continue to get worse as they get older. We should also be aware that the Oak Brook population, if you look at the demographics, has been declining over the years, and just as this number of school children. But this next concept is important for those of you outside of District 53. There are approximately 465 kids in District 53 today. But if you look at the communities in Oak Brook that are going to other school systems outside of District 53, there are another 200 children going to public school in either Downers Grove or Elmhurst or one of the other five school systems. So 40% of the Oak Brook population resides outside of District 53, and an additional at least 200 children. And what we've done as a board is we've issued a policy statement saying that we support a one Oprah concept. And the one Oprah concept basically says that for those communities seeking de-annexation from their current school system and seek annexation into District 53, that we will support that and we will assist them in their efforts to accomplish that. So Midwest Chase is represented. We issued this statement a month ago, and 3 weeks ago at the regional board meeting, I was there by their side. They got through the first phase with a unanimous vote to go to the second phase. So we think our actions will help those communities that want to de-annex from their current school system and move into District 53. We have a great educational, academic environment in D53. There's no reason we shouldn't open it up to others. Certainly, homes outside of District 53 get two benefits by moving here. One is the tax rate for the school system goes down dramatically, and number two, the value of the house goes up. The real estate agents tell us that the average, if you have two homes the same, and you're in District 53 versus out of District 53, that there is a 20% premium to be in District 53. So there's a lot at stake here for the residents that want to pursue de-annexation. Why build on the sports core? And this is probably the most controversial part of this initiative, more than we had ever thought. The honest answer is there is no place else to build a new school. As I said before, we can't build it on the Butler property without disrupting residents and displacing them. We looked at the Forest Preserve. They have deed restrictions. They do not allow their property to be sold for schools. We looked at the McDonald's site, the soccer fields by the post office. McDonald's doesn't want to sell that property. Somebody told us who opposes this, well, go buy a office building on Jory Boulevard. You don't want to put a school in the middle of office buildings. So the fact of the matter is, for the village of Oak Brook, there is no place else to do this if we want to do it. As I said before, the sports core has financial difficulties, and what we want to avoid is doing what our federal and state government do, and that is just ignore the issue. So right now, the catch-22 with the sports core is they're losing money, but they don't have money to invest in the facilities to attract more income. So if you talk to the people who know the sports core, the big driver of their revenue is the golf course. The problem is, as seasons have changed a little bit, when they get rains, heavy rains, it doesn't drain properly. Their drainage doesn't work, but they don't have the funds to fix it. If you talk to people who use the bath and tennis, the swimming pool, the bathrooms, the tennis courts, they tell you that they are not in the greatest of shape, but there's no funds to fix it. What this initiative allows is for, if we're allowed to purchase 8.5 acres of property, there would be an infusion of around $4 million to the sports core. That would allow them to pay off their debt to the village, and number two, invest in the facility so that it can produce the income it needs to stand on its own feet. 8.5 acres is about 3% of the sports core land. We would also lease the right, so during the day when our kids actually are in school, they're going to run out into the fields. So if you turn around that big open field back there, part of that we would lease the right to let our kids between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock, they go out to recess, they toss a ball, we lease the right for them to use that space. There potentially would be some additional parking here. Our facilities today, and they would be in the future, are open to all of the community. If you want to use the gymnasium, all you got to do is sign up for it. If you want to use the meeting rooms, the auditorium, all of that is available for community use. The other thing that Oak Brook doesn't have, if you go on the internet, is it doesn't have a town. It doesn't have a center or a core. By putting the sports core together with the library, together with the school, you begin to get some synergies and you get more of a kind of a gathering place available for the community. How would we pay for the school? Again, we're projecting a $40 million total cost. Right now in District 53, we have $6 million in reserves. So that's kind of our bank account that we can move over to pay for the school. The properties, the sports core property and our two core properties have been appraised. We expect that when we're done negotiating with the village that we'll have a net of about $5 million from the sale of our 20 acres of land versus the purchase of 8.5. We would take an internally funded bond. We plugged in here 14 million. I really expect that to be between 10 and 14 million. And we would pay the interest on that 20-year bond from the throw-off from our tax money, what I had said before. So we're more efficient now. We're throwing off 800,000 to $1 million a year. We'll take a portion of those dollars and fund an internal bond. And then we would ask for a $15 million bond referendum from District 53 taxpayers. What would this cost a District 53 taxpayer? If you have a home valued at $500,000, it's going to cost an additional $187 a year for the next 20 years. So if you have a house that's $1 million house, this is a linear number, you double it. So you can calculate it based on your condition. $187 for 20 years is around $3,700 all in. If a new school doesn't make up that difference in property values, it would be surprising, and I'll get to that in a second. For those not in District 53, they don't pay the bond cost. But if they pursue annexation and they're successful, then they assume their share of that bond cost. So the cost, the $187 cost for a home goes down if more people join District 53. Another concern is what would you do with your two current school properties? Both school properties are zoned either R3 or R4. The difference between R3 and R4 is just the lot sizes, the way they're configured in the village, and the minimum home size. But essentially R3 or R4 is a designation for single-family homes. That's how the land that the schools sit on is zoned today. What we would do is we would demolish the two schools right after we vacate them. The reason we would do that is to make sure that somebody doesn't purchase them and use them for an unintended purpose. The homeowner association presidents, we've had several meetings with them, we're working together. But there is an important thing that we found out going through this process in Oak Brook. We found that the zoning codes, if you look at them online at the Village of Oak Brook, they go back like 50 years. They'll tell you how you have to care for your horses, they'll tell you how you clean up manure from your barn. You know, things have changed a little bit. But right now, the way the code is written, any R-rated property in Oak Brook has the right to build a school on that property. Anyone can come along and build a school on an R-rated property without any approval. So today, a school doesn't necessarily always fit the designation of what a school was 50 years ago. So what we're doing with the village, and they've agreed to it, is we're pursuing what they call a text amendment to zoning, which would change the zoning in Oak Brook to say that schools are no longer allowed in R-rated property unless there are public hearings, and number two, that the village trustees vote to allow that school to be put into that location. So what we want to do is protect the village from someone coming along who has unlimited funds and buying, pick a number, 20 homes in the middle of Ginger Creek and tearing them down and putting a school up. And right now they have that right to do that. So this text amendment would change that process. What's wrong with the current schools? Here's a kind of a quick list of some of the issues that we have at Brook Forest. Again, when the school was designed as open concept, the walls are really paper thin. Any parents that have kids there know what the conditions are like. A severe lack of electrical outlets, very inadequate ADA. The entry vestibule is average at best. And you can kind of read through the list, but these are all things that are not up to the standards they should be. Same thing with Butler Junior High. We don't have any ADA access to the second floor, so if we have an ADA child, we actually have to move the classroom to another location. Traffic congestion, of course, as I mentioned. The food preparation in both schools is marginal, is the best word I can use. There aren't cafeterias, there aren't kitchens. They have some hot meal service, but it's very inadequate. The same thing, water drainage. The drain tiles at Butler are totally broken around the school, so all the water drains right down to the school. We got 3 massive pumps that pump water out of it, etc. Other important facts, if we go ahead with a new school, a K through 8, it would have 2 separate wings. It'd be a K through 5 wing and a 6, 7, and 8 wing. But the 2 sides of the school would share common infrastructure. They'd share gymnasiums, auditoriums, and cafeteria at different times of the day. So that's how you get some of your efficiencies. The sports core, as I said, it's a controversial issue. Should we be allowed to buy sports core land? They've actually sold land 4 times previously. The deed of that property allows land to be sold. The 4 previous sales were to an individual home buyer, a developer, and then DuPage County to widen 31st Street. We absolutely know that regardless of what happens with the school, the sports core needs a plan so that they don't become an undue burden on the village. If the 2 referenda pass, we have an obligation to fulfill all of the code requirements of the village in DuPage County, including traffic, water retention, etc. And then even if the referenda pass and we meet all the code requirements, we still have the village board and the trustees must still approve the final construction of the building. We've talked to real estate agents. The latest meeting was this Monday, a week ago, at ERA in Hinsdale. We've explained what we're thinking of doing. And all of the real estate agents, well, I can quote what ERA, there were 12 or 15 people in the room, and they said, Oak Brook needs this because we have much more difficulty selling homes in Oak Brook than we do in Hinsdale and Clarendon Hills. They were very much in favor of having a new school to attract new residents. We also have done homework after talking to the real estate agents. A high-performing school generally has a 20% impact on home values. A new high-performing school usually gives you an extra 5% bump. So, you know, there's not a hard and fast statistics, but from the research that we've seen and what we've heard from the real estate agents, there should be an additional bump in values. This is actually the sports core running over here. This is, here we are right here in the library. This is the 8.5 acre site. 31st Street, we would put a stoplight here. We would improve this road, and then there would be an access road into the school property. So you can kind of see in the remaining open space, and here would be land that during the day we'd lease the right to let the kids run on. This area over here is all forested. There's the sled hill. The sled hill, nobody probably knows, was created when they built the village hall. They decided not to take all of the debris and haul it away. They dumped it over there and it became the sledding hill. So one of the reasons we wanted to stay away from that site is it's going to be expensive to take it all away and haul it away. But this forested area in here has potential for development. If the sports corps has the funding, it could be opened up to either a cleanup first of all, but then second of all, paths or dog parks or additional fields. The diagram here is a work in process, so don't look at this as the diagram. It's intended to show this is the footprint of what we would need as far as a 120,000 square foot building. It is not the design of the new building. We don't know what the design is. There's some concepts here, but that's to be developed. The additional parking over here is going to go away. So that will, in the next diagram, that will not be there. But pretty much the 8.5 acres, we would have, this would be how cars come in and they loop around to pick up kids, they loop around back out, parking. On Grant Street here, that's a very small street, we would not touch that street other than the fire department and police department want a light-activated gate here for emergency use. If they need to get in through this way, they can also get in this way to the school. So this is kind of working in process right now. So, you know, kind of in summary, as we've studied this for well over a year, we think given the options available that this is the most cost-prudent decision for the village and for the school. We think it's important for the benefit of Oak Brook in its entirety to embrace this one Oak Brook concept and begin to get the community together. We definitely think a new high security school, high academic performance will help attract residents. And we absolutely know the sports court can be better than it is today. So now, I'll turn it back over to Joe, and you guys, any questions you have, feel free, jot them down, we'll try to answer all of them.
Alan, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.